Bo Rowland is the second here, not to be confused with Chad Dolan, who looks like he was the first. Good morning, everybody. I'm Bear with Preparedness.com, and we're going to do a little bit of an intel brief today from my office, which is pretty cool. My office has these, which is super cool. So it's Monday. Bear Independent Brief, 21 March 22. Anti-war protests are still occurring around the world, from Oslo to Buenos Aires. Even in Russia, at least 50 cities have held protests against the war. Of course, not every nation is openly against the war in Ukraine. The Prime Minister of Japan has urged India's Prime Minister to take a harder approach towards Russia, which is going to be tough for them. But the joint statement issued after those talks still did not condemn Moscow's actions. India previously called for the violence to stop, but continues to buy Russian oil. Lei Yusheng, China's Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, said of the Western sanctions, quote, "The sanctions against Russia are getting more and more outrageous. History has proven time and again that sanctions cannot solve problems. Sanctions will only harm ordinary people, impact the economic and financial system, and worsen the global economy," end quote. China has also yet to condemn the invasion. On the map, Russia's invasion looks like the gaping mouth of a serpent consuming Ukraine from the north, the east, and the south. This has left Kiev, or Kyiv if you're globally astute. This has left Kyiv looking warily to Belarus, Russia's ally. Belarus, make no mistake, is no ally of Ukraine. Ukraine's government has accused Russia of staging false flag attacks on Belarus, interestingly. And just a few days ago, Belarus stopped a missile that was launched from Ukraine. It appears unclear who's actually responsible for the launch of that missile. Its president, Alexander Lukashenko, has said that Belarus would resist entering the conflict. I don't believe him. Quote, "I warned you that they would push us into this operation, into this war. We are not going to become involved in this operation that Russia is conducting in Ukraine," end quote. Still, every nation has its limit, and Lukashenko has suggested the same. That being said, generally speaking, when we're dealing with politicians, it's my rule of thumb that they're going to do the opposite of what they say they're going to do. Sup, Billy Hill? So, Lukashenko saying we're not going to get involved in this war between Russia and Ukraine. Lukashenko, you were already a host to tens of thousands of Russian troops and battalion tactical groups that moved operationally out of Belarus into Ukraine. And Lukashenko and Belarus is a puppet state of Russia. We know this. So I don't believe Lukashenko. I also, frankly, don't believe the leaders in NATO and our own president, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., when they say they're not interested in getting involved in this war in Ukraine. I think that's the outward-facing messaging that when the Black Swan event happens, that they're going to go, "We didn't want this war, but they drug us into it," like the sinking of the Lusitania, like the Gulf of Tonkin incident, like Pearl Harbor, like 9/11. Something's going to happen that is the onus for war, and in the meanwhile, the groundwork is being laid globally, but definitely domestically as well here in the United States, to build the social mandate required to support a war in Ukraine. Bear, please play us some drums. Maybe at the end of the brief, I don't know. Some of our junior executive program associates are here, and they have very sensitive ears because they're babies, so we'll see. The UN has reported that now more than 3.3 million people have fled Ukraine, and about 6.5 million people have been displaced within the country's borders. The 1.5 million children who are refugees fleeing Ukraine are at increased risk of being trafficked, especially those that have been sent alone. UNICEF's regional director for Europe and Central Asia said, quote, "The war in Ukraine is leading to massive displacement and refugee flows, conditions that could lead to a significant spike in human trafficking and an acute child protection crisis. Displaced children are extremely vulnerable to being separated from their families, exploited, and trafficked. They need governments in the region to step up and put measures in place to keep them safe, end quote. Now, if you've been at this channel for any length of time, you know how we feel about human trafficking and displaced children. And the real tragedy here is not just that that's very likely going to happen, but that it's being used for political gain, again, to achieve that mandate domestically and internationally for action in Ukraine. The talking heads and the powers that be are doing everything that they can to get you bought in on the concept of supporting a ground war in Ukraine by Western forces. If you're on Patreon, you have the relevant links. If you're not on Patreon, you do not. So you can go to patreon.com and search for Bear Independent, and you'll find us there. You can help support the show. It's $5 a month. And there's over 2,000 exclusive pieces of content there. Now, just a couple of articles I want to look at this morning from RT Russia Today, which, yes, we acknowledge is absolutely a propaganda arm of the Russian government. But all media everywhere is a propaganda arm of somebody, whether it's their respective governments or the big they, the powers that be. Okay? Moscow, from RT. Moscow warns of a $500 a barrel oil. The warning comes as the EU prepares to consider placing embargo on Russian crude. Now, we've talked about this last week, but we're going to go ahead and look at it again because it's going to matter. The petro yuan versus the petro dollar, combined with China and Russia potentially backing their currency with gold, could greatly devalue the US dollar. And honestly, it's retaliatory based upon the financial sanctions that the US has put on Russia to this point. Oil prices, from the article, oil prices will jump to $300 a barrel if the West abandons Russian oil, the country's, Russia's, Deputy Prime Minister and former Energy Minister Alexander Novak said on Monday, adding that, quote, some see it possibly reaching $500 a barrel, end quote. And as we talked about previously, that would put the, right now we're somewhere around $100 per gallon of crude oil with prices at the pump between $4 and $7 a gallon. So if we 5x that, $500 a gallon oil, without any further decrease in the purchasing power of the US dollar, just on the supply demand side of US crude, or domestic price of crude, domestic and international crude oil, that puts the price per gallon of gasoline somewhere between $20 and $35 a gallon. Talk about economic retaliation, right? By the way, 95% of everything you touch was on the back of a semi-truck at some time. So what do you think is going to happen to shipping costs? They're going to go through the roof. And when you look at things like Amazon Prime, where the cost of shipping is built into the cost of the product that you're buying, everything is going to become exorbitantly more expensive because of just the shipping, but also the input of the raw materials to create that thing, required shipping to get it there, that energy required to produce that thing, right? It's a cascading effect. And so it's absolutely a potential threat. That being said, remember, Bear Nation, remember we're commanded to fear nothing but Yahweh our Elohim, the Lord our God, okay? And so we don't fear anything, but we can receive all this data as an imported into our brain, receive it as an input, and act accordingly. So the warning comes as the EU, European Union, plans to discuss placing an embargo on Russian crude as part of its fifth set of sanctions aimed at putting more pressure on Moscow to stop its military operation in Ukraine. I don't believe sanctions are going to stop Russia from doing what they're doing. I think that Russia did the math. They knew these sanctions were coming. They war gamed this hard before they went, and they know what they're doing. All right, back to the article. Novak added that if Western consumers stop buying Russian crude, the country will diversify its supplies and will find buyers elsewhere. That's a wink, wink, China and Asia right there, and India potentially. Oil prices have risen by nearly $4 a barrel on Monday, with global benchmark Brent exceeding $112 by midday global meantime, or Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, on expectations that the European Union might join the United States in banning imports of Russian crude. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, meanwhile, has called such an embargo, quote, unrealistic, pointing out that the EU countries still heavily depend on Russian oil and gas and cannot simply cut themselves off on short notice. Quote, too many refineries in the eastern and western parts of Europe still completely depend on Russia's oil and gas, and it's even worse. Reuters quoted Rutte on Monday as having said ahead of the expected debate by EU foreign and defense ministers in Brussels. So that's something to be aware of. And then this is an interesting article, and the reason I bring this up is it illustrates potentially the propaganda levels that are being taken in and around. Hey, we love you back, Mark O'Connor. Cot Lumber, the best lumber in all of Cotland. Cot Lumber, believe it, it's tremendous. The straightest boards, the hardest wood, the best grain, cotlumber.com. Now, I hope you guys got a chuckle out of that, Mark. Just illustrating the propaganda that's out there. And is it legitimate? Maybe. Is it propaganda? Who knows? We don't. That's the thing. Ukrainian frontline medic claims he's ordered castration of all Russian POWs. Again, from RT, let me repeat that headline. Ukrainian frontline medic claims he's ordered castration of all Russian prisoners of war. Captured soldiers will die en masse at the hands of his doctors, he warns in an interview. Russian soldiers captured by a Ukrainian volunteer medic unit will all be castrated, its founder and commander declared on national television on Sunday. The combat medic, whose volunteer team has been described as medical angels by the Western media, said that, air quote, cockroaches don't deserve the right to procreate. The shocking confession came from Gennady Duzanenko, a constitutional lawyer turned volunteer frontline medic in Ukraine. Speaking to Ukrainian media in a live interview, he condemned the U.S. for its reluctance to go to war with Russia on Ukraine's behalf before commenting on the Russian military. Trust me, Russian President Vladimir Putin's military hardware burns well. The corpses of Putinoids may stink, but they become unthreatening, he said. Druzhenko said that during the conflict, he had diverged from the principle that requires an injured enemy combatant to be treated as a regular patient. He further implied that at the hands of his unit, Russian prisoners of war will die in very large numbers so that surviving Russians remembered Ukraine with terror, like the Germans remembered Stalingrad. At this point, the host cut the interview short, stating that Russian soldiers would be held accountable. Her co-host reminded the audience that Russia was being investigated for alleged war crimes in Ukraine. On Monday, YouTube blocked the entire live stream segment. Russia has launched a criminal investigation into the threats. And Druzhenko heads the Pirogov First Volunteer Mobile Hospital, a unit of civilian medics that has been providing services to Ukrainian troops since 2014. Druzhenko is fluent in English and has been readily speaking to the likes of CNN and the New York Post about the work of what these outlets have dubbed the, air quote, medical angels. So, we treat ours, here's what he says of his unit. We treat ours and turn theirs into fertilizer. Unwelcome guests have never been loved on this soil. He claimed Americans had been telling him they were jealous of Ukraine because they were afraid to fight against the Russians, and we are not. Again, rhetoric, possible propaganda, likely. Again, remember the source here. This is at RT, which is Russian state media. So, interesting times we live in. Somebody asked in the comments, so what do you think, Bear? You think it's going to go to World War III? You think it's going to go nuclear? I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think that the powers that be on an international scale are posturing to get us embroiled in World War III. I think that that world war will likely be large-scale conventional warfare. And the reason I think that, and I'm willing to be wrong, although I don't like the ramifications if I am wrong, the reason I think that is that you don't nuke something you aim to control. China owns 38% of U.S. farmland. I don't think they would take too kindly to nuking it. You can't produce food in a place that's been utterly destroyed. It's a lot like why, in my opinion, you see Russia slow rolling in Ukraine, because they don't want to destroy the infrastructure. Okay? They don't want to destroy the infrastructure. So the land and the grid and the water and the food and the resources, all of that, they're resources, and it takes a lot more effort to rebuild those things than it does to preserve them. And so I think we will see large-scale conventional warfare in Eastern Europe, and then potentially in South China Sea and the Indo-Pacific region as well. But I don't think off the bat it's going to go nuclear, because that's actually not good for business. And I think the reason that we're becoming embroiled in World War III is for business, geopolitical, top-tier global interest business. And for those reasons, there's things that we need to be aware of here. Food shortages, fuel shortages, material shortages, the ability to provide one's own security, the ability to police and govern oneself and one's own AO, the ability to develop and maintain and correlate actual good data, good intel, all those things. Hell, just having a Liberty Garden in your backyard, right? That's where I think we're at. Based upon what I know currently, what I've seen currently, what I feel currently, subject to change at any moment, like I said, but I don't think we're going to go to nuclear war that fast. Is it possible? Yes, absolutely possible. Is it plausible? I don't think currently. And I hope that I'm right. I really don't want to be wrong about that, although it's entirely possible that I am wrong. So that's where I think we're at. And ultimately for us, as we see this spin up to what is very likely going to become World War III, the biggest question becomes, what do we do about that, right? And it's your basic preparedness stuff, man. Build people, develop intel, have a good network, stack food to the rafters, be able to produce your own food. I'm on record as saying I think we're going to see rationing here in the United States by Q3 of 2022. That's not that far out. It's about 6 months out, people. Already right now, the powers that be are determining who gets what resources when. That's called rationing. So I think that we may find ourselves in a position where what you can grow is what you can eat. And so you should grow food. You should be in an area where you can grow food. And as Pastor Joe Fox of Viking Preparedness likes to so succinctly state, your two biggest threats in Teotihuacan, the end of the world, asterisk as we know it, are people behaving badly and starvation. And so if you're around a bunch of people you think are going to behave badly, that's not a good place to be. And if you don't have food to eat, and if you don't have food to replace the food that you're eating, that's not going to be good either. And so population density matters. It matters a lot. Thank you, Matthew Stone. I appreciate it. So that's the brief for today. It's a brief. I appreciate y'all very much. As you guys know, your promo code at refugemedical.com is Bear Nation. That gets you free shipping on everything in the store. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know how much longer that's going to last. The reason I don't know how much longer that's going to last is because we are engaged in a daily scramble to acquire the materials needed to fill your orders every day. And prices are going way up. We are going to be in a position, unfortunately, probably by the end of this month, beginning of next month, where we are going to have to necessarily raise our prices as well, because all of our inputs are going up. Everything's going through the roof. You can't get it. And gosh dang, we're going crazy just to be able to, good morning, Saw. We're going crazy just to be able to fill the orders that we got. But I promise you, I give you my word as a man, if you place an order with us, we will fill your order. You will get your stuff. We're not like Optics Planet. Mine delivered today. Thank you, Lockworks. I appreciate that. And so, promo code BearNation at refugemedical.com. Use it while you can. And same thing, promo code BearNation at refugetraining.com. It gets you 5% off all the classes in the store at refugetraining.com. If you don't know how to save a life, how to stop the bleed, how to CPR, how to AED, how to force on force, if you don't know these things, the world is getting stupider every day, every damn day. And again, our input costs are going up. And so I would encourage you, go sign up for a class at refugetraining.com. We love what we do. We're dedicated to teaching people the fine art of how to not die. And we trained 1,100 people last year as a small startup business. That's incredible. I think we're very good at what we do. And we've had a lot of people who do this professionally and who have been taught by the United States Department of Defense and several three-letter agencies, The Fine Art of Not Dying, come to our class and tell us afterwards, damn, this is an awesome class. Damn, this is an awesome class. And so for y'all as civilians to have access to this level of training, it's a real blessing, honestly, and that's what we set out to do with refugetraining.com. So you can use promo code BearNation there for 5% off. And yeah, that's the show. Got a lot of people asking for some drums. I'm not warmed up, man. I'm not warmed up. End the brief with the drum solo. Nailed it. I'll be honest with you. Drums are mine. I share so much of my life with y'all. I really do. Like, you guys, you know my thoughts, you know my feelings, you hear me pray, we read the word together, I tell you what I think's happening in the world. You've watched my kids grow up on camera. You see how my wife and I interact. You see the progress that we've made on our land. You see us destroy our debt. You've seen us grow our businesses. These are mine. And it's not that I don't love y'all. I do. I love y'all. I respect y'all. And I'm thankful for you. These are mine. Y'all have a blessed day. Shalom.